Are you rethinking your purpose in life? Being centered in a strong spiritual connection is more important now than ever. Hi, I'm Bryn Blankinship, hypnotherapist, international instructor, and author. Each episode, along with Dr. Pat, I'll share my experiences with guiding spiritual regression clients into the afterlife and the soul lessons gained, prompting you to explore your own soul's journey and empowering you by shifting your perception of yourself and your place in this world. I want you to know that you're here by design, not by accident. You are not alone. You are loved. You are here on purpose, for a purpose. When you stand in your truth and fulfill your purpose, you support others in fulfilling theirs. If this intrigues you, stay tuned in as we explore. Hey everybody, I'm Bryn Blankinship. I'm your host today on the Afterlife Teacher Soul Stories, bringing you full circle. And we have a guest, Elisa Shine, certified hypnotherapist and Life Between Lives hypnotherapist. And so let's just get into it. We're going to start talking today about past life regression and life between lives, spiritual regression, to understand why. Like, why would someone want to have that type of a session? And just to give you a little background on this, I used to be a lead instructor with the Newton Institute. I helped start the Newton Institute, so that's part of my journey. And Elisa actually went on to train not only with my courses in hypnotherapy and past life regression, she's trained with others in past life regression as well. And then she went on to train with the Newton Institute. So, let's talk a little bit more about your background, Elisa, and what I know that sometimes a powerful session can make someone choose to have, to decide to do this and be a practitioner. What was your path that led you to being a facilitator and a practitioner?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Bryn. It's so wonderful to be here with you today and talk about this work that we're both so passionate about. So it began for me, like it did for many others, with Michael Newton's books, The Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. I read those books when they first came out. It was in the late 90s and about the year 2000, I think. I read The Destiny of Souls soon after it came out. And I was touched deeply by what he wrote, because it provided answers for me about the soul and what happens after we die. And, I was involved in other work at the time. I had a career in social work, and I worked with parents and young children for many years. And it was beautiful work. But after a time, I started having a reoccurring thought that I needed to do something different, that I needed to change my career. But I wasn't sure what to move towards. So I was on a holiday at one point, and I set the intention on that holiday to receive some signs about what I was meant to engage with next. And, I was really contemplating the direction my life was going, and I was very open at that time and really tuned into, the different things that were happening on this trip. And I love to read books. And so I went into a number of bookstores on this trip. And the first time I went into a bookstore, my eyes fell almost immediately on the book, The Journey of Souls. But I disregarded it because I've already read the book and I just moved on to something else. Then I went into another bookstore, and again, I noticed one of Michael Newton's books. This one was actually a compilation of Life Between Life hypnotherapies. It was Memories of the Afterlife. And the third time I went into a bookstore, a salesperson saw me looking at the shelf, and she walked over and she asked me if I had read this book, The Journey of Souls. And she took it off the shelf and she offered it to me. Well, it clicked, and I realized, okay, this is a really strong sign. So I bought the book, even though I'd read it many years before, and I read it for a second time. And something really shifted within me. I felt a really strong yes. And soon after that, I booked my first past life regression session. and a Life Between Life session with a certified Michael Newton hypnotherapist. And I had a profound life-changing experience. And it shifted something within me. And it helped me really, the sessions helped me to recognize that I had been in a pattern of smallness and holding back. And that it was really time for me to stop flying under the radar and to move into a path of greater service. And I knew that I wanted to become a hypnotherapist. So I went online and I discovered your trainings, Bryn, with the Regression Institute. And I read about your background and the fact that you have had over 2 decades of experience in this field. And you had worked closely with Michael Newton in developing the Michael Newton Institute for Life Between Lives hypnotherapy, and your own work with soul regression, soul expression, pardon me, spiritual regression, Cesar, just really spoke to me, and I knew that I wanted to train with you.
At the time that you signed up for my course, did you know that I had a chapter in Memories of the Afterlife? Were you aware of that at that point?
I wasn't. It wasn't until later that I discovered that.
So see how our paths were almost interacting, but we hadn't, it just hadn't lined up yet. But you came across Michael Newton's work. You even saw the book it's from his, it was his his fourth book that he oversaw the process and allowing his practitioners to share some of their stories in the book. Yet we still didn't know each other yet. You took your journey, you did some sessions, and let me just say that many people, most times, you do a past life session prior to doing the LBL session, Life Between Lives, LBL, so that it kind of paves the way to get into that deeper state, so you can get more information when you do the LBL. So still, our paths were lining up, but she had to go through her process over there while I'm going through my process over here. And then down the road, she said, "Hey, I think I'll take this training. Let me go look." And then we found each other. And let me just say, and then we'll get back to more of your path. Since that time, Elisa has not only taken the training, she's a co-instructor with me for my hypnosis and hypnoregression certification trainings. She is a case reviewer for my certification program. And she's also now got a chapter in Finding Purpose, another Newton Institute book. So that's the thing. I've been highlighting different people that have taken my program from various walks of life, because you don't have to be a social worker. I had a doctor on. You don't have to be a doctor. You can be from another walk of life and be drawn to this work because you had a powerful experience. And then after you have the experience, look at all the doors that have opened up. In my life, the things that I'm doing now, in Elisa's life, the things that she's doing. And then a lot of our paths have started to align because we have a common goal of service and wanting to help others find their truth and find their authenticity. And to give people a safe place to explore that. So, Elisa, what else do you want to share on the back of what I just talked about?
Yeah, well, I want to follow what you had to share about, basically following that path. And so I just followed my yeses, and I didn't know where they were going to lead. But I was just getting this nudge, and now I recognize that it was not only my higher self, but my guides helping me to align with what I had designed for myself before I came into this human body, into this current life. And they were just nudging me along the way, providing me with the signs. But I had to make the choice. I had to step up. I had to say yes. And
Yes.
I did. And it has led me to wonderful places. And it has been such a wonderful experience to engage with you, Bryn, and to work with you as a co-instructor and, a case study reviewer, and in the other capacities that we've worked together. It has been a beautiful experience, and it continues to be opening doors
Oh,
And
it's wonderful. I love it because we know what it's like to sit in that chair. I started with the Newton Institute as certification manager, and then I moved into another board position as the I don't know what it was, vice president. That was a while back, VP of membership. So I started in that chair, right? But I started by having a class, and then I took more classes that led me there. And the same with Elisa, like, I see a lot of parallels to some of the steps that I took early on. And that's why I wanted her to be part of my organization, because as the new students are coming through, she has that compassionate side that I want for my instructors and for my team to, help the students step over that threshold and onto this path where they're doing this work. And there's a lot of inner exploration that happens as you're moving through that path along the steps to becoming a practitioner, and then you're better able to help your clients. So let's talk about some of your clients, Lisa. I know you have some stories to share with us with, some of your session work that you've done.
sure, I'd love to share some stories. So, the first one that comes to mind is a man that came to see me for a past life regression session. He was struggling with feelings of despondency, and, he was having trouble engaging with life and the people in his life. And he had a reoccurring thought that he couldn't do this anymore. The thought kept repeating in his mind, I can't do this anymore. And he was feeling sort of at his wit's end, so to speak. So as he moved into the regression and moved into a past life, he discovered that he was a man in England in the 1820s. And he was a very angry person, and he was really upset with the new king that had come into power. And he was involved with a subversive group that were planning to overthrow the king. And he was meeting in secret with this group night after night, planning the strategy. And unbeknownst to him, their plan had been discovered. And one of those nights while he was away, some supporters of the king broke into his home, and they took his wife and they killed her in retaliation. He escaped. He was not harmed himself, but he fled, and he lived the remainder of his life in regret and despair and depression. And he ended up ending his life, and his very last thoughts were, I can't do this anymore. When he received some help from his guides during the session, and this is a part of every past life regression session, there are loving guides waiting to support the client, to help them make the connections between the past life and the current life. And so his guide came forward and provided some support for him and helped him to see that, that feeling and that thought of, I can't do this anymore, was just a carryover of energy from that past life into the current life. And in the current life, he was struggling with the state of the world and the powers that be, and he was feeling a lot of frustration and anger. And his guides reminded him that he was not meant to take the same path and to take that same way out this time, that he'd chosen to come into a body, into this life, and he was meant to do things in a different way. And then the guides showed him another lifetime where he was a Taoist monk, and he was able to connect with the beautiful energy of earth and master the art of meditation. And they told him that he was meant to blend the energy from that lifetime as the Taoist monk and his passion for justice in that other life as the man in England, but in a different way. He was not supposed to be a subversive warrior. He was meant to bring good to the world. And he was also meant to recognize the disparity in the world, but to set some clear boundaries with it, but not to fight the old system, but instead to create beauty and to live from that place of beauty and be an example to others. He emerged from the session and he left in a state of awe. And then he contacted me weeks later and he told me that the heavy feelings were gone and that he had felt a renewed enthusiasm for life. And he had already been an artist before he came to see me for the session. And he told me that he was really passionate about the work that he was doing and was really, really loving engaging with his creative process. So it really shifted things on many levels. It helped him to release some grief and some trauma from that past life. And it helped him to understand the current challenges in his life and the repeating pattern there and the limiting beliefs that were keeping him stuck in a place of despondency.
Yeah, that's a powerful story, really illustrating how this work ties in to current life, right? Because yes, we're exploring a past life, but the focus is how can this help me now? And you have the higher guidance that comes in from spiritual guides that help bridge the gap, help to, help the client to move past the feelings they're feeling that are triggered from the past life and then have a new understanding as they move forward. And, Elisa is, I didn't mention this yet, she's in British Columbia. So she's in another part of the world, but that's a very powerful message, for us, whatever country we're in, when we're dealing with different things with the government and, when you're not part of the government or if you're in the government and you're dealing with different things. Do you have another story for us? Because I find this fascinating to hear from other people, hearing their stories through client session work.
Yeah, so I had a client come to see me who was very accomplished in her field of work. She was a naturopathic physician and an acupuncturist in Chinese medicine. And although she had received, a certain level of status in her field, she was struggling financially. Things were not flowing any longer, and she said that her work no longer felt fun. And she was wondering if she was doing something wrong in her career. She had many other questions, but this was the main one that she wanted to focus on. And this was a life between life session that she was coming to see me for. But, each life between life session begins with a past life regression. So she entered a past life where she was a male and she was a medicine man helping others in Asia. And this was the 1400s. And she worked in a small village and she assisted others with herbs. And this was her main healing modality. And she was very accomplished and successful at what she did and well respected within her village. And the word got out and spread far and wide, and she was contacted by a messenger for royalty, and they required her assistance at the palace and wanted her, and sorry, him, pardon me, him to work at the palace for royalty. Well, he really struggled with this decision because he knew on one hand that if he said yes to this offer, it would really afford his family with greater comfort and financial wealth. And, they would benefit in this way. And he also knew that if he left his village, that those that relied on him for his healing abilities, they would suffer. And so he made the decision to stay with his village, decline the offer to work with royalty, and to stay with his village and help those that were less fortunate. And he lived the remainder of his life in peace, and it was a beautiful, fulfilling life. Then, when he entered the spirit realm, that place where we all connect with in between lifetimes and receive support from the advisory council and his guides, he was reminded that in that life he chose to follow his heart, and his heart led him to a life of fulfillment and one of great peace and also purpose. and that he could have chosen to accept that offer, but it was more meaningful for him to stay where he was and support those less fortunate. Then the counsel helped my client to become aware that they were living from that place of using their mind to navigate the decisions in life, especially those decisions related to their career, and that my client's heart was somewhat closed. And the guides then stepped forward and helped my client to open her heart. And they administered some beautiful healing energy to resolve any blockage there. And they reminded her that she had come to Earth to help others to open their hearts as well. And they told her that she was meant to blend her healing modalities with these heart activations. And they gave her very explicit directions on how to help her patients open their hearts. So my client received a lot of information that made great sense to her. She was able to partner her knowledge of naturopathic medicine and acupuncture with these wonderful modalities that would enable her to support her clients in activating their heart, which would help them to expand their consciousness. And the guide shared with her that the humanity really needs this at this time, at this stage in the development and the evolution of humanity. So my client came out of the session very surprised at what she received and said it made perfect sense. And she went on to, incorporate what she'd learned in her practice. And she has a beautiful, thriving practice today. So, this really helped her to get a sense of the bigger picture, to really understand what is available in terms of help from higher wisdom, from counsel, from guides, and that there is a greater purpose, one beyond the human mind. And I really don't believe the human mind is meant to be driving the bus. It's the soul mind that's meant to drive the bus. And she was able to connect with the soul mind and her purpose in this lifetime.
That's wonderful. And another great example, right, of, for us, the format might be the same, but no two sessions are the same. Each client is going to have their individual story, their unique reason for why they're doing what they're doing. And then guides come in and bridge that gap to help them move forward, with the new information and more in alignment with their heart. Because, the heart and head working together, we need both. Like, don't lose your head, but let your heart be the driving force behind that so that you can have a more fulfilling life and your body's going to be happier. You're going to feel more at peace. And two great examples through these stories that you shared with us, Elisa. So thank you for that. So I know we're getting ready to wind up here. So how can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so they can find me through my website. It's elisashine.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram under Elisa Shine Hypnotherapy. And I'd love to hear from any of your listeners. Happy to answer any questions they may have.
Thank you so much for being here. And this work is so fascinating, and the time flies. Like, we just got started, and I feel like we just started the conversation and the show is over. But we will continue at another time. And thank you for being here. And I am your host, Bryn Blankinship. And this is my guest, Elisa Shine, talking about soul stories and spiritual regression. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Afterlife Teacher, Soul Lessons bringing you full circle with Bryn Blankinship and Dr. Pat. Tune into Transformation Talk Radio for more discussions of the soul's journey across different lifetimes and soul lessons gained, helping you to consider the deeper reason you are here. Bryn shares her wisdom spanning 20 years of guiding spiritual regression clients into the afterlife and connecting them with their spiritual team and soul's purpose to bring them full circle, helping you gain insight into your own soul's purpose while supporting others in fulfilling theirs. Living in partnership with your soul, with less worry and greater trust, you can be in divine flow and thrive. For more information on becoming a certified hypnotherapist and regressionist and assisting with the global transformation taking place, visit brynblankinship.com.